The curse of the brilliant mind, a life too aware. There's a peculiar kind of suffering that belongs only to the brilliant, a silent war waged not in the world outside, but in the corridors of their own mind. It's a battle fought in solitude, between clarity and chaos, between knowledge and peace. Why is it that those who see the most often feel the least peace? For the intelligent mind, awareness is both a blessing and a curse. It's the ability to perceive the invisible strings that pull at human behavior, to recognize the absurdity behind order and the fragility beneath meaning. But the more one understands the architecture of existence, the more that understanding becomes unbearable. Because to see clearly is to see the cracks in society, in morality, and in oneself. Ignorance has a strange mercy to it. It cushions the mind from the abyss. But intelligence, true intelligence, strips away that comfort. It exposes the machinery of the human condition, revealing the noise, the contradictions, the futility. Most people move through life guided by illusions that hold them together. The illusion of purpose, the illusion of justice, the illusion that everything happens for a reason. The intelligent mind tears through those illusions and discovers the void beneath them. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster." But for many great thinkers, the monster was never outside. It was the endless awareness within. Nietzsche's brilliance illuminated truths that humanity still struggles to accept. That morality is constructed, that order is temporary, that God is dead. Yet the same clarity that made him a visionary also consumed him. His mind became too sharp for its own peace. He didn't go mad because he was broken. He went mad because he saw too much. Virginia Woolf lived a similar paradox. Her prose revealed the intricate dance of consciousness, the beauty and the ache of simply existing. But her depth of perception came at a cost. A constant awareness of life's impermanence, of the noise within thought, of the quiet despair beneath ordinary moments. She once described her own mind as a wave against the rocks. The same wave that carried her genius also carried her toward the edge. Even Albert Einstein, the symbol of rational mastery, confessed that his own mind often isolated him. "It is strange to be known so universally," he said, "and yet to be so lonely." For him, understanding the cosmos didn't bring serenity. It revealed the smallness of everything, including himself. There is a term for this, the burden of consciousness. To be intelligent is to live with an awareness that rarely sleeps. It means seeing patterns where others see coincidence. It means feeling the weight of every moral question, every existential contradiction, every shadow behind the light. It means never being fully at home in the world, because the world's simplicity no longer makes sense. And so the intelligent mind seeks peace the way a starving man seeks food. But the more it searches, the more it realizes that peace cannot coexist with constant awareness. The same mind that can solve equations, build empires, or write poetry cannot escape the whisper that none of it may matter. This is the hidden cost of brilliance. The more you understand, the more fragile understanding itself becomes. To see through illusion is to see through comfort. To see too much of reality is to question the very foundation of meaning. Perhaps that is the cruel paradox, that peace, which everyone seeks, is not compatible with vision. The light that illuminates truth also casts the longest shadow. And maybe peace was never meant for those who see too clearly. Awareness as isolation, the lonely gift of perception. Awareness, the rare ability to notice what others overlook, brings with it an invisible distance. It's not a physical separation, but a psychological one. The more a person perceives, the less they belong. Because what most people call reality is a shared illusion, a collective dream we agree not to question. And the intelligent mind questions everything. At first, this awareness feels like power. The exhilarating discovery that the world is far more complex, more layered than anyone told you. But the deeper you go, the more that power turns into exile. You begin to notice how society operates not through truth, but through comfort. You see the masks people wear, their polite lies, their self-deceptions, their desperate attempts to fill the silence with noise. And once you see the masks, you can't unsee them. Colin Wilson called this the fate of the outsider, the thinker who cannot participate in ordinary life because he sees through it. The outsider walks among people, but feels like an observer, watching a play that everyone else believes is real. He longs to connect, but every conversation feels scripted, every belief too shallow, every ritual too repetitive. His awareness isolates him not because he rejects the world, but because the world rejects what he sees. This isolation is not always visible. It hides behind polite smiles and quiet routines. The intelligent often play along. They laugh when expected. They nod at conventions. They pretend to be at ease. But inside, a different world unfolds, one filled with constant reflection, relentless observation, and the haunting question: why does no one else notice? The loneliness of intelligence is not just social, it's existential. When you realize how little certainty there truly is, when you understand that meaning itself is constructed and fragile, it becomes hard to find common ground with those still anchored in certainty. Most people find solace in belief, in religion, politics, relationships, or identity. The intelligent mind, however, dismantles these structures, searching for something more authentic. But what remains after dismantling is often emptiness. That emptiness is not a flaw. It's the space that awareness creates. Yet to live in that space demands immense strength, the kind few can sustain. Because awareness doesn't just illuminate others, it exposes the self. It reveals every contradiction, every fear, every hidden motive. To know others deeply is to know your own illusions as well. And that realization can feel unbearable. Psychologists call this existential isolation, the recognition that no matter how connected we are, our inner world is ours alone. For the intelligent, this awareness is magnified. They see through words, sense unspoken thoughts, detect falseness in sincerity. Empathy becomes both a gift and a curse. They feel too much, understand too deeply, and can no longer find rest in ignorance. Ignorance allows belonging. Awareness demands solitude. History is full of such minds, misunderstood not because they were wrong, but because they were early. Kafka saw the absurdity of bureaucracy before the world called it dystopia. Emily Dickinson saw the universe in a single moment of consciousness and retreated into silence. Tesla envisioned a connected world a century before the internet and died alone in a hotel room. Their solitude was not punishment, it was consequence. They stood too far ahead to walk among the unseeing. Yet there is a strange beauty in this loneliness. Because while awareness isolates, it also clarifies. In solitude, the intelligent mind can finally observe the world without distortion, not through the lens of society, but through the raw truth of experience. Still, the cost remains. To perceive reality in its fullness is to live without the soft veil that protects most people from despair. Awareness becomes both a mirror and a prison. It reflects everything, but offers no escape. And in that prison of perception, the intelligent learn the hardest truth of all. that the more you understand humanity, the harder it becomes to be human. The psychological trap, overthinking, control, and the illusion of meaning. At some point, the war leaves the outside world and moves inward. The intelligent mind, once curious and explorative, begins to turn on itself. What started as a pursuit of truth becomes an obsession with certainty, a desperate attempt to make sense of everything that refuses to make sense. This is the psychological trap of intelligence, the illusion that if you can just think deeply enough, you can outsmart the chaos of existence, that through enough reasoning, enough analysis, enough mental control, you can finally rest. But the mind that never stops thinking becomes a mind that never stops suffering. Overthinking, at its core, is not a flaw of intelligence. It is the consequence of it. The ability to see multiple perspectives, to predict outcomes, to imagine alternatives, these are strengths. But when turned inward, they create paralysis. Every decision becomes a labyrinth. Every thought leads to another, and every answer unfolds into new questions. The intelligent person becomes trapped in their own mental web, forever analyzing, forever second-guessing, forever chasing clarity that doesn't exist. The paradox is cruel. The more the mind tries to control uncertainty, the more uncertain it becomes. Psychologists describe this as the illusion of control, the false belief that through understanding, one can master life. Intelligent people often overestimate the power of logic. They try to intellectualize emotions, rationalize suffering, and find patterns in randomness. Yet, life continues to defy explanation. Love resists logic. Death refuses reason. And meaning itself slips away the harder you try to hold it. The ancient Stoics warned of this long before psychology gave it a name. Epictetus wrote that peace is found not in controlling events, but in accepting that you can't. Yet the intelligent mind rebels against that simplicity. It wants to solve life like an equation, not experience it as a mystery. It wants to understand its way to happiness. But happiness cannot be understood, only lived. Carl Jung once observed that excessive rationality can become a form of spiritual blindness. The mind, in its quest for clarity, denies the darker, irrational parts of itself, the emotions, instincts, and contradictions that make us human. Jung called this the shadow, the part of ourselves we repress because it threatens our idea of control. But what is repressed doesn't disappear. It grows stronger in silence, twisting the intelligent mind into anxiety, perfectionism, and self-doubt. And so, the thinker becomes divided, a war between intellect and instinct, between reason and feeling. The more one seeks order, the more disorder arises. The mind becomes both the judge and the prisoner, both the healer and the wound. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, understood this paradox profoundly. He wrote that meaning cannot be pursued directly. It must emerge as a byproduct of living authentically. Those who have a why to live, he said, can bear almost any how. The intelligent mind, however, often confuses why with how. It searches for purpose through analysis, forgetting that meaning is created through action, not comprehension. To think is a gift, but to think without rest is torment. The intelligent mind builds theories to protect itself, explanations for love, systems for morality, frameworks for existence. But none of them can withstand the simple truth that life is not meant to be solved. The world is not a puzzle waiting for completion. It is a river meant to be entered, not understood. The tragedy is that the same awareness that drives human progress also drives personal suffering. The desire to know is the root of both creation and collapse. When the mind refuses to surrender, peace becomes impossible. Because peace requires trust, and trust is what intelligence destroys. The more you know, the harder it becomes to believe. The more you analyze, the harder it becomes to feel. The more you think, the less you live. And in this way, the intelligent mind becomes its own captor, building elaborate prisons of thought, decorating them with philosophy and logic, and calling it understanding. But every so often, in rare moments of exhaustion, the mind glimpses something beyond its reach, a fleeting stillness that exists not in knowledge, but in surrender. A quiet voice that whispers, "You were never meant to understand everything. You were meant to experience it." It's a realization few can accept, because to surrender control feels like death to the mind that defines itself through mastery. But perhaps the real death is in refusing to let go, because when you try to think your way to peace, you only prove why you'll never find it. History's pattern, the madness of genius. History remembers brilliance, but it often forgets the suffering that came with it. For every masterpiece, there was a mind unraveling behind it, a restless intelligence fighting the very gift that made it extraordinary. It's a pattern that repeats across centuries. The brighter the mind, the darker the struggle. Friedrich Nietzsche, who once declared that to live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering, became a symbol of his own philosophy. His relentless search for truth stripped away every illusion until nothing was left but the unbearable weight of awareness. He saw the collapse of morality before the world did, the birth of nihilism before the modern age, and it broke him. His writings shook the foundations of philosophy, but his own foundation could not bear the same tremors. Vincent van Gogh painted beauty that transcended pain, yet pain was all he knew. His colors burned with the intensity of a man who felt everything too deeply, who saw the divine in madness and the unbearable in beauty. He once wrote, "I put my heart and soul into my work, and I have lost my mind in the process." His art was not an escape from his suffering, it was the language of it. Alan Turing, the man who helped end a world war, was destroyed by the very society he saved. His intelligence saw patterns in chaos, mathematical codes where others saw noise, yet his world could not see beyond his difference. His mind decoded the impossible, but could not decode human cruelty. Nikola Tesla, Emily Dickinson, Franz Kafka. The list stretches across time like a tragic constellation. Each genius connected by the same invisible thread, a mind too awake to rest. These figures were not merely victims of circumstance. Their suffering was intertwined with their insight. Because to question everything, to stare at the structures that hold reality together, is to invite collapse. The human psyche is not built to withstand unfiltered truth. Illusion, it seems, is a form of psychological gravity. It keeps us grounded, keeps us sane. Those who break free from it often drift too far from the world to ever return. Society, ironically, reveres these minds after it has destroyed them. It celebrates their genius, quotes their words, studies their art, but rarely acknowledges that their suffering was not accidental. It was systemic. It was the cost of seeing what others refused to see. Even in modern times, this pattern continues, only in subtler ways. The digital age has created new forms of brilliance and new forms of despair. The innovators, visionaries, and thinkers of today are celebrated for their intelligence, but quietly consumed by anxiety, depression, and burnout. The same mental sensitivity that allows them to innovate also leaves them vulnerable to the chaos of constant awareness. The world demands genius, but it does not know how to care for it. The tragedy of the brilliant mind is not that it suffers. Suffering can be endured, but that it often suffers alone. History's greatest thinkers did not find madness because they were weak, but because they were alone in their depth. Their ideas reached further than the empathy of their time. It's easy to romanticize this, to believe that genius and madness are inseparable, that suffering is the price of greatness. But perhaps the truth is simpler and sadder. The world is built for comfort, not comprehension. And those who seek comprehension will never find comfort in a world that worships ease. When a mind surpasses its age, it doesn't just expand, it fractures. The light that illuminates truth also blinds the one who carries it. So the question remains, was it brilliance that made them suffer? Or suffering that made them brilliant? Perhaps both are true. Perhaps the two have always been the same thing, two sides of the same unbearable awareness. And if history teaches us anything, it's this: those who see too much too soon are not destroyed by madness, but by the loneliness of being right too early. The modern mind, information overload, and the collapse of inner silence. The tragedy of the modern age is that the curse of intelligence is no longer rare. What once tormented a few extraordinary minds now afflicts nearly everyone. The world has become a machine of endless stimulation, an engine of noise that never stops running. Every second, new information floods our consciousness. News, opinions, arguments, data, entertainment, an infinite web of distraction pulling at every corner of the mind. What used to be solitude has become scarcity. What used to be silence has become almost extinct. And for the intelligent, this world is both paradise and prison. Never before has there been so much to know, and never before has knowledge felt so meaningless. The internet promised connection and enlightenment. Instead, it delivered confusion and despair. Information, once a source of empowerment, has turned into a storm without direction. The more you consume, the less you understand. The more you know, the less certain you feel. The modern mind, especially the intelligent one, drowns in analysis. Every topic becomes a debate. Every idea becomes a battlefield. The once quiet process of thought is now performed publicly, dissected by algorithms, judged by strangers, monetized by attention. Intelligence in this era is no longer a pursuit of truth. It's a performance. The tragedy is subtle but devastating. The intelligent person, once driven by curiosity, now becomes consumed by validation. The need to be right, to be seen, to be understood replaces the deeper need to simply know. And yet, behind the glow of the screen and the endless scroll, the same ancient emptiness remains. The quiet longing for meaning that no amount of information can fill. We are surrounded by more words, more images, more opinions than any generation before us. But never have we spoken so much and said so little. Never have we known so much and understood so little. The modern world has democratized knowledge, but in doing so, it has fragmented wisdom. The intelligent suffer most in this chaos because their awareness, once their strength, becomes their torment. They can't turn it off. They see the manipulation in headlines, the propaganda behind politics, the algorithmic control of human behavior. They recognize how every platform feeds on outrage, how every idea is commodified, how even truth is bent to serve attention. This constant awareness breeds exhaustion. It's not just mental fatigue, it's existential fatigue. The sense that every thought is borrowed, every insight already spoken, every discovery already undone by cynicism. In earlier eras, solitude gave birth to insight. The philosopher had silence, the poet had stillness, the scientist had long nights of contemplation. Today, those spaces are gone. The intelligent mind no longer wrestles with truth. It wrestles with noise. Even meditation, rest, and reflection have been packaged and sold as trends, consumed rather than practiced. Peace itself has become a product, marketed to the restless. But peace cannot survive where noise is constant. And the modern mind, conditioned to be forever alert, forever connected, has forgotten how to be still. Cognitive scientists warn of information fatigue syndrome, a state where the brain, overwhelmed by stimuli, begins to lose the ability to process meaning. But beyond science, the condition is spiritual. It's the loss of silence, that sacred gap between thoughts where clarity once lived. The intelligent are most vulnerable to this collapse because their curiosity keeps them engaged long after their mind begs for rest. They dive deeper into the noise, searching for truth, unaware that the search itself has become the prison. The irony is bitter. The age that promised to enlighten the human mind may be the one that finally destroys its peace. And perhaps that's the modern curse, not ignorance, but endless awareness. The ancient struggle of the intelligent was to understand too much. The modern struggle is to escape knowing everything and understanding nothing. We have gained infinite information and lost the ability to listen to ourselves. In the end, it's not the chaos of the world that drives the intelligent to unrest. It's the silence that the world has stolen from them. The return to stillness, the strength of saying nothing. Eventually, the noise begins to lose its meaning. The arguments, the theories, the endless debates, they all start to blur together. And the intelligent mind, exhausted from its own endless movement, begins to crave something it once dismissed as trivial: stillness. After years of questioning, analyzing, and dissecting, a quiet realization dawns. Perhaps peace was never hidden in understanding more, but in needing to understand less. The great paradox of the thinking mind is that the pursuit of truth leads inevitably back to silence. Every philosophy, every religion, every form of wisdom that survives the test of time converges on the same simple truth. The mind cannot find peace through thought, only through the stillness beyond it. This is not surrender in the ordinary sense. It is not giving up curiosity or intellect. It is the recognition that thought is a tool, powerful, essential, but not meant to rule you. The intelligent mind must eventually learn what the wise have always known, that peace is not found through addition, but through subtraction. The Stoics knew this. They spoke of ataraxia, a tranquility that arises not from external control, but internal clarity. The Buddhists called it shunyata, the empty fullness of being. The Taoists called it wu wei, effortless action, living in harmony with what is, not against it. These ancient teachings are not escapes from thought. They are returns to balance, reminders that the mind was never meant to be the master, only the servant. Stillness does not mean silence of the world. It means silence within it, a peace that exists even when the noise continues, because you no longer need to react to every sound. For the intelligent mind, this is the hardest lesson of all: to stop believing that every problem requires a thought, that every silence demands an answer, that every mystery must be solved. The world was never meant to be perfectly understood. It was meant to be experienced. There comes a moment, often late in the journey, when awareness transforms from burden to grace. When the same intelligence that once tore everything apart finally understands that it doesn't need to hold everything together. When the mind, tired of searching, allows itself to be. And in that moment, something remarkable happens. Thought doesn't disappear. It softens. Awareness doesn't end. It deepens. Life for the first time, feels neither meaningless nor profound. It simply is. The greatest thinkers of history often reach this realization near the end of their lives. Einstein, in his later years, spoke less about equations and more about mystery, about the quiet wonder of existence. The most beautiful thing we can experience, he said, is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and all science. Nietzsche, in his rare moments of calm, hinted at the same truth, that to affirm life fully, one must stop dissecting it. The intelligent mind doesn't need to destroy itself to find peace. It only needs to recognize that not every thought deserves an answer, and not every question needs to be chased. Peace is not the death of thought. It's the return of balance between thought and being. Because in the end, the world doesn't reward the loudest mind. It rewards the quiet one, the one that can see everything clearly and still choose not to speak. Maybe that's the final lesson. Peace was never meant to be found in the noise of knowing, but in the strength of saying nothing. Epilogue: The gift of restlessness. And so, after the long journey through thought, awareness, and solitude, we return to where it all began: the restless mind. The very thing that once felt like a curse now begins to reveal itself as a gift. Because what is restlessness, if not proof that the soul is still alive? That it refuses to settle for easy answers, that it continues to seek truth, even when it hurts? To struggle with peace is not failure. It is evidence of depth. It means your mind has not gone numb to the world. It means you still care, still question, still feel the gravity of being alive. Peace for the intelligent was never meant to be permanent. It is not a destination to reach, but a rhythm to dance with. Moments of clarity between storms of thought. The goal is not to silence the mind forever, but to learn when to listen to it and when to let it rest. Restlessness is what drives creation. It is the fire behind art, philosophy, and discovery. The same unease that keeps the thinker awake at night is the same energy that reshapes the world. Without it, there would be no progress, no challenge, no beauty born from struggle. The difference lies in how one holds it. To fight the restlessness is to suffer. To understand it is to transform it. When the mind accepts that it will never fully understand, when it learns to coexist with its own complexity, restlessness becomes not torment, but motion. A quiet pulse beneath existence, reminding us that there is always more to see, to feel, to become. So perhaps peace and intelligence were never meant to be enemies. They are simply two sides of awareness: the storm and the calm, the question and the silence, the thought and the stillness that follows. In the end, the most intelligent minds do not escape their restlessness. They befriend it. They learn to see beauty even in their unease. Because within that constant searching lies something profoundly human: the refusal to stop wondering. And maybe that is the truest kind of peace. Not the end of thought, but the quiet understanding that you are more than the thinker,